through my head are obviously as a consequence of the life I've led and the information that I receive. And like you say, I look at the world through this like a conspiracy lens, and not just conspiracy, that, encompass the whole thing, the servers that we're on collectively. That's kind of who we are. And all of us here are kind of similar in that way, but we're not, we are kind of outliers in the population, if you like. Right. So, we look at the world in a particular way and we take an interest in a particular way, whereas a lot of people don't. And it just becomes almost like sand slipping through your fingers when you're trying to get a grasp on what, quote, like the world is doing, how the world is reacting.
Yeah.
It's difficult to get a handle on
I think a bigger stage of, as far as events occurring or whatever, Trump's influence on that, and
Trump seems to be Trump's the big one, right?
Yeah, he always is at the moment, isn't he? But between that, the Israeli,
but he's the American president, isn't he? Yeah, it's all the big
Musk,
ticket. It's the big ticket items, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think
I guess I guess we could see the like magnetism of like how the U.S. empire is starting to pull away as it's as the debt is getting larger. We're not able to fund a lot of these, so there's a lot of vacuums being created. If for instance, the news pulling out of NATO and so much backlash right now over the Palestinian thing going on, so then you could point to Ukraine, Russia right there. I think a lot of these factors definitely, like Trump being the head honcho of the free world, whatever, it's turning out it's not so, like,
you can't make
he's
it
not as influential as what I'm saying. It's
Although it was interesting that, even with, we spoke about this, I think, a few weeks back, but you've got the whole Gaza situation and that, and how you'd have a whole bunch of more left-leaning types that, are completely against the idea of Israel occupying Gaza and that, but they're also very against the idea of somebody like Trump. But then when you have somebody like Trump step in to try and have a ceasefire over that, you've got this conflicting thing within left culture and that, where they've got the man they hate just ended the war they hate. And it's like, I think this is very much a part of where we're entering now, to be honest with you, just this conflicting
it's like confusion squared, isn't it?
Yeah, that's where I think that this is kind of leading us, actually. It's this kind of chaotic paradox in the sense that a lot of the narratives create these echo chambers and really heavily partisan viewpoints that are adopted by people, and I think going back to the terror incidents, they can be seen to act as just stimulus for, in that sense, a return of the populist sort of right wing, termed far right, termed whatever. But all of these things that are create this kind of partisan response, but baked into it, there is almost always a paradox or a contradiction where you could say, well, for instance, if you're very pro AI and you think that it's going to be the best thing since sliced bread, how do you square the circle of it requiring so much energy compared to most industrialized processes and still wave a flag for, protecting the climate if you're a believer in climate change? So there are these kind of paradoxes that are running concurrently and almost out of control. And I can't help thinking that some of that is baked into the pie purposefully to create a kind of a chaos.
Well, it's the myth of left and right as well, isn't it? This idea that there's a left and a right. There is no left and right. And so the idea of the double-edged sword, everybody knows that whatever it is you point at, it's a tool, isn't it? So you know, a nuclear power. You know, you can have the bomb, you can have free energy. You know, everything's a double-edged sword, and it's people get conflicted, and then you have to sort of put your money in one place or the other, and then that's how you get right-leaning people and left-leaning people. But the truth of the matter is you know, life is paradoxical, and you've got to square those
That's
two
right.
things away, that there are opposing forces, and that is life, and that's why life is unknowable, because as soon as
Yeah.
you start to ally with one side, the other side starts to rise up and go, hey, you may not like me, but I'm just as valid as your viewpoint. And there's this sort of conflict in the human mind. I think that's what's being played.
Yes.
So you know,
that's a
they're
very good
trying
point.
to get you to join one camp, you know, and be completely left wing. So I've got friends who are very left leaning, and they're so conflicted
Yes.
by Elon Musk, because on the one hand he's the savior that's going to take us to Mars and electrify our transport industry, and on the other hand he's throwing Hitler salutes at, you know, these public events. And it makes me laugh, because, you know, I like to think that even though I have this sort of understanding that there's a double-edged sword and a paradoxical nature to life, it doesn't. It does give me tools to go, look, I don't have to take any of this seriously, because this is the nature of life. So in a way,
Yeah,
well, yeah,
I know
I'm
what
kind
you're
of
saying,
waffling
but
now, but yeah,
I just see that the appearance of these narratives and spectacles and events, the paradox is so becoming really obvious. Though that's the thing that's really got me scratching my head. The way that, for instance, Trump is talking as if America is the best country in the world with a completely sorted economy, and they're doing great things, when in actual fact he's imposing tariffs, taxes are going up, inflation's going up, the dollar's plummeting like a stone. So there's a built-in there's a built-in paradox in everything that he's saying. It's obvious that
yeah,
he's not telling you what's actually going on. I think that sort of speaks to what
That
Hoagland was
that's
saying a minute ago.
that's also part of the branding. So they will always impose these sorts of you called it paradoxes, Waddy. I mean another term we could use is a sort of a weaponized discordia, which is
yeah,
that
absolutely,
within each of it is this sort of kernel of, you know, every movement, be it left, right, MAGA, or, you know, whatever, it has within it, even religion as well, it has within it a sort of hinge within its narrative, within its dogma, that, you know, will always irk you. It will irk your very natural being. And it's designed to do that, because once you get past that, once you know, still believe, even after this complete and utter, completely, um, you know, irksome or paradoxical or completely nonsensical idea, they have you at that point. You're now, your attention is captured. You're now ideologically branded. Another thing to mention as well regarding these events is that they're basically short form spectacles, right? We live within an empire of spectacles, an economy of signs. So everything is self-referential. Effectively, it's a loop that we're on. And within the hyper reality of this empire of spectacle, they need these events, this chaos, this discordia, again, like Ordo ab chao, to maintain the illusion that it's real. And again, if you're in a play,
Yeah,
right,
there's a point.
be it the actor or you're spectating, or of course, if you're in these hyper realities, you play both the spectator, the audience member, and the actor at the same time. Um, if you're viewing something that you know, it's boring, it's just a play that's, you know, there's nothing really happening, and it's going through the sort of motions of the narrative, and there's nothing really dramatic going on, your attention is going to lessen. So you need these compulsive engagement cycles that are born out of some basically dramatic events of flair that keep you watching the, you know, the series
yeah.
or the show effectively of
We're not
society.
allowed to settle. It's like, you know, it's almost designed to stop you settling, getting your feet on the ground, and then realizing that the nature of life is paradoxical, and that's fine. it wants to pull you one way or the other. It wants to put you in a group. But when we talk about left and right wing, so I can stick with that. But it's trying to pull you either into the left or into the right. But every spectacle that they release has this possibility of going, oh my God, I thought I was left, but now I can see there's like you're saying, there's a germ of truth in all of it. But it just keeps you hopping from one foot to the other.
Yeah.
Whereas really, the more measured response would be to stand in the centre peacefully and go, I can see that there's left and right in all of this, and then the dream dissolves, doesn't it? And you're arguably a better individual for it. But it's like they're slapping you around, aren't they? Here comes the left, and here comes the right. Slap.
Yeah,
They've got you on the ropes.
It's a storm of permacrisis. That's what it's basically.
Yeah, right.
That's the software that's running throughout society right now. That generates as well learned helplessness. That's what all of these events appear to be wanting to generate. Well. Exactly, yeah.
Well, it's in terms of the left and right, the year. If we look at the year and what's sort of transpired, I see that the general consensus response from the population seems to be a leaning back towards populism and right wing, and it's not just in the West; it's happening in South America and other places. So that to me, it makes me think that because it's international as opposed to just Occidental or even just like in the normal Western nations, it makes me think that that's a deliberate push in that direction, a means to an end. I don't know what you think about that, but I just see that there's a definite, Farage in the UK that seems to be, rising up. The Trump presidency is quite right wing, and there are others in other parts of the world, Italy, Germany, I think Finland. It seems to be a way that we seem to be going, and that just that just seems. It seems that it couldn't possibly evolve like that internationally. So synchronously,
they're very good. They're very good buttons to press, aren't they? And they're always going to be there. They're always a good fallback position, to press those kind of racial.
Yeah, and to swing the pendulum around.
Yeah, exactly. That's just coming around again, isn't it?
It was popular, in the last sort of 5 to 10 years to be more sort of left-leaning in a sense, and it seems that it's kind of swinging back the other way, where most people I come across these days actually tend to have a bit more of a tendency to lean towards the right in a way. You know what I mean? They're starting to question all the gender stuff in schools. They're starting to question immigration. They're starting to question the way the money systems, that kind of thing. It just seems like
it's like a playbook, really. So you introduce all of this, like, broadly speaking, you encourage immigration, whether legally or illegally, and then you give preferential treatment, or you appear to give preferential treatment to these others coming into your nation, and then you can stoke up, the nationalist fervor, and it's just another, deception, because whatever happens in politics, it happens deliberately, right? So whatever's happening in your particular nation, you can bet your ass that it's planned. It's not, it's not like that just happenstance. So it's just that thing, isn't it?
Swings from
the swing of the pendulum. Yeah, exactly.
Right. And I like how you brought up squaring the circle earlier in a concept, because it is just like these stooges that are on the stage that you could, they're lying right through their teeth.
Yeah.
And so it's the veil definitely is kind of falling in the sense that they're not even pretending, or the act is terrible in the sense that they represent us, or in a sense that, right? Like,
it's like a wake up and smell the coffee moment.
Yeah.
It's like, we don't fucking care now. You can't do anything. This is the plan. Get
Like,
on board or fuck off.
and so
I
I
think
would, yeah, go ahead.
no, jump in, Hoodlum. Sorry.
I was just gonna make a quick connection with a little bit of the esotericism with that 47, as Trump being the 47th president, and I was gonna tie Bowie into it because that's what he had on his sleeves. That was Bowie's birth year, because Bowie, in my eyes, is one of the occultist examples of how uh, the veil is rises and falls. He's a mime, he's a meme, he's a clown, he's a pirouette, he's the puppet on the strings, which is what all these guys are doing. And at also 47 in Bowie's birth year, Bowie also was born on the same day as Elvis. So really, it's this kind of continuing, kind of going into that 47 theme of Trump being this,
Well,
maybe, yeah, that's what I wanted
Charlie
to tie into it. So go
Charlie
ahead.
Kirk was also born on the same day as George Floyd, October 14th. So
Oh, the
of course
martyr.
Charlie Kirk, yeah, was the white martyr, and then of course you had the Floyd, who was the black martyr. And yeah, it's even if you look at their dates of death, there's a weird there's weird numbers that appear there too. Yeah, well, the 47 as well, of course, relates to the 11, and that relates to Kabbalah. Even the idea, by the way, of the turning point. Funnily enough, that appears in Hebrew as the modern Hebrew equivalent of turning point would be mashber, which can also mean crisis point. But if you look at the biblical Hebrew, it actually means the birthing stool. So you see it in 2 Kings 19:3, and this is me just reading my Kirk notes, and it states, "Children have come to the point of birth, mashber, but there is no strength to deliver them." So the idea is that with each crisis, there's a new child of the agenda that's being born,
It's almost
or a
like
new stepping
Caesarean.
stone. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
With it would be called, like,
Mm.
for me, it's like part of squaring the circle, because the circle would be the chaos aspect, Discordian aspect, where nobody's come to any kind of points or conclusions. That would be the difference between, like, the letter J and the letter L, and the horses, the knight's movement on the chessboard. It's in this concept of being able to square the circle. That's where I was kind of breaching this point into, trying to make some correlations, right? Because we got to pick up the patterns, the breadcrumbs, the details, the kernels that stand out, that are significant, at least just within consciousness. So that's where I
Yeah, well,
would
I think
say.
that's a really good point, and it's a point you made in the chat notes previously. And I think it's a good point to just sort of reiterate, that idea of Discordianism and Operation Mindfuck in terms of what happened at that time, and that becoming, it was created by Thornley and Hill, and it was almost like a pseudo religion that was based on the idea of life is born out of chaos, and that chaos was responsible for the vitality of life itself. And it was all based around this mythical goddess called Eris, who was the goddess of chaos, as far as I can work out. But it was deemed at the time to be a sort of a parody, almost like a counterculture pseudo religion that was it was deemed as almost kind of fake, because it involved various different types of a sort of conspiracy, occultism, religion, and various other, elements to it, because it was so chaotic and difficult to pin down. And I just think that idea from
What
what
era?
they were doing is very much what we're seeing. So to go back to what Silas was talking about and Hoodlum were talking about, these granular aspects of occultic numerical significances, and things like that have been punctuated throughout the the events of this year and many years before this that people pick out and say, look at this synchronization. I think that those things that you can see within it have a lot of parallels with the ideas that were coming out in that time of Discordianism and Operation Mindfuck, and the stuff that Robert Anton Wilson then ran with in the Illuminatus trilogy and all of that stuff, which encompasses intelligence, conspiracy, occultism, numerology, all that stuff was happening then, but it was being done on a more simplistic and grassroots level. And now we seem to be involved in it's the same playbook, but we're now in a situation where it's gone from a tiny microcosm to this huge, it's been amplified by the internet, AI, and then the interconnectability of people who have become their own amplifiers of partisan views, flag waving, political ideology, and religion. And I think that those two periods of time it's so interesting to see the parallels between them.
Yeah,
What do you think?
well, I've just recalled what you guys were speaking of, and this will tie in with what you're saying. Back to the idea of nationalism. Of course, me and Armin and Zeal and Kazumbo, we did a video just recently, and I haven't had much flack on YouTube about it, but Odyssey I did. I had to, go through and sort of, I guess, deconstruct the arguments of several, but regarding race-based nationalism, that is on the rise. And the reason it's on the rise is sort of twofold, right? And Spengler spoke about this, the rise of a populist Caesar, which, funnily enough, will be seen by the masses as some sort of, restitutor orbis, a revivification of the civilization, which, ironically, it will not be. That's actually the throes of the one last sort of spurt of vitality within the civilization before it goes into the throes of death. And so Trump, yes, Farage, reform looks like it's going to sweep the board in 2028, give or take. Again, this is all preceding the. I think they're going to basically, the way they take down civilizations, right? The way they collapse the hegemons is they do it through a foray, a barrage of black swan events, which are unexpected crises at once, and they do it at once. So you get the four horsemen all at once, if you will, right? And so I think they're gearing up to a war, but you need to get rid of the left wing, who are, of course, not populists. They're not nationalists. You can only fight wars. You can only get men to fight wars if you have that sort of nationalistic fervor, which itself, by the way, is fictitious. It's a hijacking of organic community, So I think that's also ties in with that. Sorry, man, jump in.
No, sorry, so I didn't mean to cut you off. But when you say war, I mean, do you mean, men facing each other with armor and guns and that kind of thing, or do you? Because when I think about the whole idea of the future of war and that kind of thing, and I think we're already in it, it seems to be more of a mind game. You know what I mean? Like the war for the mind sort of thing, rather than for land or anything physical in that sense. But
like
I just
boots on
wondered
the ground.
what. Yeah, exactly.
I
I see it less as boots on the ground and more a
I
psychological
think it's going to be,
thing.
if it's going to be war, it's going to be civil, isn't it? Because that's all we can do is have a civil war. But there's an oxymoron if ever
I
there
think,
was one.
yeah,
Or you could call it maybe a
sure.
religious war in a sense for battling of the minds.
Ideologically, yeah.
Who's going to be the cult of power and who's going to dominate the conversation, who has the loudest voice when it comes to basically who to worship. It's very, it's seemingly over time just been
Yeah, that's a good point.
The grip of that is kind of So Christianity and all that, and then um, some of the patterns that I look for when trying to create some maybe validity to some of the information that's being flooded is it's funny. I wanted to tell Silas about this is because I was going down the rabbit hole watching Adam Green. He does a lot of stuff on Christianity versus paganism,
Oh
and
yeah.
he name dropped Matthew North, who I didn't hear about before. And this is one of my points was that a lot of the times the guys who get knocked, like whacked, like killed or suicided, I find that a lot of the times that's kind of an indicator. Wow, there might be some validity to what that guy was saying. And so I go back to Matthew North's videos, trying to do some research on him. And I read all the comments on the videos, and I see Silas commented on his video like 4 years ago. He's like, "Great video, friend." He's like, and so I
Oh
was
wow.
I was like, "Oh shit, it's Silas." I got a chuckle about that, and I wanted to bring it up to you today.
I'm
And I
sure
also wanted to
somebody
ask you.
somebody mentioned somebody mentioned my name to and my books as well. But I think Blood on the Sand. They mentioned it on a live stream of Adam Green, and they wanted me to reach out to him and all that. But no, absolutely not. Uh,
Yeah,
I that's a wee bit too dangerous. But yeah,
I I mean, 'cause did you hear about what happened to Matt? I was gonna ask if you knew that he passed away or whatnot.
I didn't actually know that. No, no,
Yeah, apparently 2 years ago, he committed suicide.
Jesus.
Yeah, and he's one of the exposure or journalists who's this is I found about him trying to prepare for this, kind of this recording. And he gave me so much good information about Bill Hicks and the John Birch Society and how Bill Hicks, his manager, how he got on the David Letterman show and all his corroborations with Alex Jones and Joe Rogan and all these freaking so all these guys are all part of these, you call it these Discordians or these clowns, these jesters that are leading a narrative, right? And then look at what happens, right? See, I wanted to I was wondering, Silas, if you knew that Matthew North, that happened to him. And there's also a question, Matthew North's not using his real name, so he might have just faked his death as well. You never know. So that's my
What
two
is this
cents.
Yeah,
guy's
yeah.
general sort of what's his talking points? Is he a conspiracy theorist, or is he
He's
like a
right
whistleblower?
right wing, anti-Jewish, that sort of idea. I mean,
Okay,
sort of verging on neo-Nazism.
okay, right.
Yeah, but
Are you talking
the
about Adam Green or Matthew North?
Matthew North, Matthew
Oh,
North.
okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I did.
Adam Green is less so, but yeah, he's sort of the sort of um, was it like was he a pagan as well, an
He's got a
asatruist
lot
or
of, he's got a lot of shady but he's the one who clued me in on Matthew North saying that he did work
Mhm.
with them, and so I went back and did some research on Matthew North and found out about his big exposé was about Joe Rogan, and then he also I don't think that, um, Bill Hicks is Alex Jones. He did a whole thing about, like, look at
No,
how many things there are about that,
yeah,
and I don't believe that, but I do believe that they're probably, like, managed by the similar people who dominate the comedy industry. These are a lot of the, cliques. For instance, like, uh, how the phrase, like, "Oh, idiocracy is, like, becoming real life," that's this narrative that is being, like, heavily pushed, you know what I'm saying?
hmm yeah. It's
Giving people
yeah,
permission to be idiots.
exactly. Yeah, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy as well.
Yeah,
A lot of these things.
yeah,
I mean that's how religions work too, with their
yeah.
eschatologies. They
I mean, I
become
think yeah,
self-fulfilling prophecies at some
I mean,
point. And yeah,
go ahead,
jump in,
sorry.
Max.
Sorry. I was just gonna say dominating the comedy aspect of the narrative is one of the very, like, um Michael Aquino goes into talking about how to set the tone of a room and how you need, that you can use. So comedy is a way that you can use to subtly in people's subconscious, you dominate the joke or the laugh, what you can joke about or what's funny, and then people don't even, it seems to massage
That's
that.
how that's
Yeah.
how they popularized things like homosexuality. You know, and now people don't, they don't bat an eyelid about it, right? Because
Yeah, they
they
were
they,
comedic
they
characters,
produced
weren't they,
comedies.
in media?
They were comedic characters. So once you laugh at something, you've already dropped one barrier to it, because something
Yeah,
you laugh at can't be evil. Otherwise, you're also complicit in the evil, right? And I'm not saying homosexuality is evil or that. I'm just saying that that's how you would change a certain
yeah.
cultural framing of a certain thing. I mean, of course, this is part of Discordia as well. As Panic brought up, the so you had with those individuals, Thornley and what was his name, Hill.
Hill,
I think
Greg
they
Hill.
went by Lord Omar and Malaclips the Younger. I put some notes
That's
together
right.
on this. And interestingly, he was, if I can find it in my notes. Yep, here we go. So they founded this, Principia Discordia and Operation Mindfuck OMF. So they basically claimed that they were magicians who weaponized the media, right? And it mentions here that, pardon me, they founded Discordianism in the late 1950s in a bowling alley in California. They wrote the Principia Discordia, framing it as a disorganized religion dedicated to Eris, the goddess of chaos, and this was after they had some sort of prophetic vision regarding Eris, supposedly.
Yeah.
So Thornley, funnily enough, I don't know about Hill, but Thornley's quite interesting because he actually was, well, he was a tragic figure, but he served in the Marines with Lee Harvey Oswald, of
Yeah.
all people.
Isn't
The
that weird?
Patsy and the JFK. And then he also states here, Thornley later became convinced he was a victim of MK Ultra style mind control, blurring the line between his own mindfuck, so to say, and reality, a dark precursor to the targeted individual phenomenon today, or gang stalking. And funnily enough, as well, just to mention really quickly on this too, I've been looking into the University of Alabama shooting in 2010. What was her name? Amy Bishop. And if you look at her, well, if you look at her background and her father worked in Northeastern University, and that wasn't linked, it wasn't on the list when the Church Committee came out in the 1970s as being part of the MK Ultra experiments, but it was part of the Project Stargate experiments, which was somewhat similar, but it was this notion of psychotronics or remote viewing and using either chemicals, artificial chemicals, or stimulating the neurochemistry of the mind to thus unlock abilities. So there was a lot of overlap between MK Ultra and because of course
wow.
it broached into trauma-based mind control.
Is this the I don't like Mondays girl?
No, I don't know
No.
about that.
Okay, yeah,
No.
don't worry. Yes, carry on. Sorry.
It
But
sounds
yeah,
like one of
she
these kind of like Charles Manson style, like, oh, let him out over and over repeatedly,
exactly, that's exactly it. Which shows a pattern. You find this a lot with these characters, which shows a pattern that they're actually, they're assets of someone in power.
Yeah, it just seems like there's a definite parallel. I mean, you mentioned the Manson murders there as well, which was also quite a that's filled with intrigue and did it happen? Didn't it happen? Did she become Patty? Was it a staged event? Was it a false flag? Who was Charles Manson? What
if
was
I'm not
he?
mistaken,
Was he an
sorry to
asset?
interrupt, but wasn't Lee Harvey Oswald like affiliated with Manson as well in a way? Don't they have a lot of connections? If I'm not mistaken,
I'm
remember?
not sure about that. I don't know.
I haven't heard that before, but are there any modern day examples of this sort of thing occurring? because you do hear a lot of it in the past,
content
and it all
creators.
kind
I
of
was
does that up. But
just talking about one.
content creators.
Yeah, no, they are.
Okay.
Yeah, the content creators are they are. I
Well,
posted that
Joe
video.
Rogan might be a good example of it, but yeah, go on.
Joe Rogan as well. Yeah, well, it's the think about it, right? In terms of the
They're
they call them social commentators or even influencers, right? I mean, the term influencer itself is a giveaway, but essentially what they've turned the entire world into are effectively MK Ultra programmed assets, right? So it's Operation
Yeah,
Mindfuck
it's
2.0,
Yeah.
you know?
yeah, exactly. It's almost
Yeah.
like there's less input these days, and it's become more of a default due to just the sort of
they're
environment
just
and the
modern.
culture we
They're just
exist in.
modern weapons, aren't they? Modern weapons for a modern
Mhm.
war.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you know, you've got
Interesting.
people like, what's his name? Stephen Yaxley Lennon. What's his other name?
Tommy
Tommy
Robinson.
Tommy Robinson. Tommy
Yeah.
Robinson and Katie Hopkin. I mean, they're classic examples of people that have been manipulated to become figureheads of an ideology. I mean, it
Yeah.
just
Well,
it
they
really
might be on side. We just don't know, do we? I think with all of these, the rise of these characters, that they're not coming out of a vacuum. You know, it seems obvious to me that people like Trump and Tommy Robinson and all of those, they arise because a situation has been created that needs them. They're like an equalizing force almost. So in the case of Tommy Robinson,
and
you've
not
got
them,
you've
there'd be
got
someone else. Yeah.
Well, it's
exactly,
like
yeah.
who would it's like the booking agent for Bill Hicks. Like how does he get to be on David Letterman, and what jokes do they allow him to tell, kind of thing. It's the same idea where algorithm now gets to promote who gets the views, who's on the Tonight Show. Like, is it Candace Owens or is it Tucker Carlson? You know,
I recall. Oh, sorry, Hoodlum, please.
Oh, keep going. No, you're good.
No, that just brings up a recollection of mine. We went to several songwriting camps in Spain and basically the Iberian Peninsula, and me and my brother. So he plays drums, I play guitar, I write songs as well, right? And we record, when we have time. Anyway, we were working with this vocalist, and so we're typically the band, and we bring in session musicians for a time, and then usually part ways with them once the creativity's died. Anyway, he brings us over to these songwriting camps because he knows, I'm not going to name names, but some fairly big producers and artists that have worked with the likes of Ellie Goulding and all of this. And anyway, so we go over there. The place is riddled with drugs. I mean, me and my brother, we're like straight edge, I think is the term, right? No drink, no drugs. We were loving it. We were going out, 2-3 mile runs and jogs, right? And it's all flat terrain, so it was like great. But we were like a square peg in a round hole, right? And anyway,
I could imagine, mate. Absolutely.
the things that they were mentioning, there was this guy that was mentioning, the way I got into the music scene was, and he's like some sort of rapper with a white guy with dreadlocks, rapper, whatever. Like, you can see the guy is like done some heavy drugs, but before he signed to this record label, it's not a big one, but it's fairly medium in terms of Scotland and the north of England. He was homeless, right? And he said the way that I got into got the record deal was I met the producer, and basically goes on this. I won't go into the details, but he's talking about this. They had an orgy, like a pagan orgy, in the bloody woods, right, the forest. And so they were chasing. Basically, all the women run, and they chase them, right? And me and my brother were sitting there, and we're listening to this, and we're like, what the hell? And then there was another boy that he's well known in Scotland, right? I won't name the name, but anyway, he is off his rocker, drugs. He's got a real. He's sexually perverse as well, And we were sitting down one time. You know, I'm playing guitar, brother's playing the cajon. You know, you sit on it and you sort of like you use it for acoustics, right? Acoustic sessions, sort of like the drums just to keep the beat. Somebody's playing the piano and he just sits down and he just like starts grabbing. I can see it in my periphery. He starts grabbing his crotch, right? And he's like getting all jittery. He's like, oh, basically, I have to wank. I have to wank, you know. And I'm looking at him. I'm thinking, what the fuck, man? You know. So this is what, and I'm thinking, how can you be creative and write like this when you're this? You can't even sit still for 5 seconds. And then you figure out we were in the car with him and he was driving. I mean, I was praying to every god known to man. The guy's doing like bloody 90 or 100 down this Spanish road, and weird, wacky turns, and Jesus Christ. Anyway, he's on the phone to the English agent that he's with, and he mentions to him. He says, "Yeah, have you got the songs for me? Have you got this?" Basically, you know, reading between the lines, you can see he's not writing his own songs, right? And in fact, he was mentioning when we showed him one of our songs, one of my riffs, and that he's like, can I take a video of that? You know, I'll use that for my band. You know, and this is what they do. So it's not just him; they all do it. So they'll bring in fresh talent to these places, and they'll essentially record them, and the producers take the hooks and the riffs, and they'll use them in their own stuff. You know. But it's apps. I mean, that put me off even the music industry in general, because you realize it's basically you've got a bunch of programmed, drugged out people, even at the lowest levels. So how worse does it get when you get to the upper echelons? You know.
I mean, that's it. I mean, you've hit the nail on the head, haven't you? It's programmed. Now, this is a program, and this is how they create the programs. Rather than some kind of think tank, they're just tapping into all the resources they have, and it seems like what you've experienced there, that's one of their resources. I mean, he's stated it, hasn't he? He's stated, isn't it? Oh, tonight I'm going to tap into your creativity, but we're going to use it to deliver the message that I'm in charge with delivering.
If you're a compromised character, yeah,
exactly, yeah. Compromise. That's the word. Yeah. Same in politics, I imagine.
Would that be like a ritual of Pan, you know, or Eris, like that ritual that he had to do in the woods?
Do you know what's weird? See, when we went into that, it was the one we were there for a week, but the whole house. Well, I say house; it was actually a mansion that this celebrity guy owned, right? And the mansion is weird as shit. It's in the middle of nowhere, in Andalusia. And I was noticing you have, as soon as you walk in, see right above the door frame, you have Pan with his pipes, you know, like dancing. You know that it's a very famous painting from the 1900s of Pan with his pan pipes. That is right above the door. Then when you at the back door, you've got this huge owl statue, right? And now that goes on, that songwriting camp, quote, quote, songwriting camp, it goes on for about 3 or 4 weeks within the year. But they only allow, let's just call it what it is, like us, the uninitiated, you know, the amateurs, they only allow them there for 1 week of those 4 weeks of the year.
Profane.
So what the hell are they getting up to for the other 4 weeks? I mean, I'm not joking you, literally all that's around it is it's basically a dust bowl, right? Prior there was farms, olive farms and that there, but they're no longer there anymore. And I think the closest town is like, I think it's like 45 minutes away or something like that. So this is literally middle of nowhere territory. In fact, the area was it was used for spaghetti westerns, right? And yeah, so and another reason they're using Spain is all the people are poor. We couldn't believe it. We went to the shop 45 minutes away, and it's a small village. we got, I'm not joking you, maybe for me and my brother, I would say 4 or 5 days worth of snacks and huge gallons of water. I don't know how many gallons were in these things, but they were heavy, and that came to €30. I mean, here that would be you're talking well into the, I'd probably say £120 or something like that. So these, you know, you can see why they've chosen the place, right? But this is exactly, I think, this is MK Ultra in the modern day. They just don't call it MK Ultra. I mean,
Yeah,
as well.
it sounds like an Epstein Island for the budding musician class.
Oh yeah,
You've got the remoteness, you've got the esotericism within the place, you've got the debauchery, and you've got this interaction of people, it's like it's a sort of a test bed. It's a culture for that kind of a springboard into the next stage. And I think you're right, but I'm just wondering whether these places, these culture, it's like petri dishes that must be everywhere in society. I'm wondering whether they are as contrived as somebody, an intelligence, control structure is in charge, or whether our society has run to a point where it's almost naturally self-seeding. And that's kind of what I've got, like, I'm scratching my head with that,
I think
because
it's both.
right.
That's why it's compartmentalized.
How did it come
Um,
about that you were invited, Silas?
well, it was the vocalist that we were working for. He was saying, I know these guys, and we can perhaps get a record deal, or
Right.
and I was getting on, and well, I was, it was a few years back now, so I was thinking, yeah, I'll give it one last bash with the music thing, right?
Yeah.
Before I try and look for other avenues, like going back to university or what. And I says it'll be fun as well. I've never been to Spain. We've never really, me and my brother up to that point had never really been abroad. So we went to one, and then we went to another one a couple of weeks later, and it was the other one a couple of weeks later that was just Jesus Christ. Like, that's beyond. And I said, how worse is it going to get? Because obviously, I know how these
Hold
things
my
are.
beer.
Yeah, yeah. But the guy as well, he was totally oblivious to it, because obviously he doesn't look into any of this stuff. He doesn't understand how cults or programming works. I mean, the
Yeah.
reason they bring this transgressive sexuality, transgressive rites and rituals into it is because it binds everyone together, right? It's the same fraternity that's formed when you create a criminal syndicate, right? Everyone,
Yeah. Counterculture.
exactly. You get the adrenaline when when you're with your mates and you say, right, we'll all go in and we'll steal something from there, and then you don't get caught, right? You get duper's delight. That binds
Yeah.
you all together, as a sort of fraternity. So it's an artificial way to bind people. But this is part of MK Ultra, and
Yeah. The
another
added.
reason with the. Sorry, man, jump in.
No, I was just going to make a little point, but it's fine. It doesn't need it. Carry on.
Well, just final point. Sorry, I've went on a bit of a rant here. The reason the content creators and the influencers are part of the MK Ultra 2.0 or Operation Mindfuck 2.0 is effectively what they've turned the entire society into, with influencers and content creators and short form content, and even these short form spectacles, is that everyone becomes a digital court jester, and they distract themselves. And of course, in the meantime as well, they provide entertainment to the elite, right? So for the ruling class, it's a win-win. But this is it. We're effectively entertaining ourselves at the end of history. That's the reason for the social media and short form content and all of this nonsense. Yeah.
Is that what we're
Yeah.
doing?
Chester.
No. Ours is more intellectual discourse and understanding this stuff. I mean, see, once you see this stuff, it's like, for example, me and my brother at those, songwriting camps, quote, quote, songwriting camps. We see through it. So it has no bearing upon us, and it keeps us out, it kept us out of trouble there,
It's an offer,
So-
isn't it? It's an offer to you and your brother. It's like you've gone there and they've opened the door. If you want fame, this is the door that you need to step through, and then the choice is yours, isn't it? And I guess it's that idea of you're not coerced, but you're made an offer, and if you're that way inclined, if your hunger for fame
yeah.
knows no bounds, then you'll step through that door. Fuck me, you'll run through that door.
The offer is informal, though. They'll never say,
Yeah.
right,
No, of
here's
course
the
not.
Faustian Pact, sign in blood.
Yeah.
You sign with your willpower.
I mean,
It's all about will.
I've always thought of this signing in blood as not being a literal opening a vein and writing. To me, the idea of it's like signing in blood is through your actions and through your sacrifice. The contract is made.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's
Absolutely.
it's like your attention, right? Because
Yeah.
it's like you just said about the offer. If you look at everything in the granular, you've got all these things that are going on in the world, and we can either choose to give these things our attention, or not give them sort of this granular attention that draws us into picking a side or waving a flag. And I think that's kind of part of the trick, right? It's that drawing in of our attention to each of the individual micro. What did Silas say? They're like short form events, and we all become our own entertainers. Well, that's because we become sucked in. Our attention is garnered, and we choose to give it attention. And I'm not sure whether, I mean, we're all probably affected by this. The news cycle itself is part of that. And then, we have those things that people in the conspiracy realm latch onto, like I do myself. The synchronicities behind the Charlie Kirk incident. We mentioned them already. The comparisons with his date of birth and that of George Floyd, and all of the other numerical significances. And it's those things that I constantly assess and say to myself, am I becoming my own fucking parody? Is this me becoming part of the thing that I'm trying to point at, saying, isn't this just, as we say, Operation Mindfuck 2.0? Isn't this what it is?
Yeah.
And I'm just concerned.
It's the interconnectedness of everything, isn't it? There's no getting away from it. The thing about the human mind is you can set up this thing where you, in your mind, you step outside of a situation and try and look into it. And that's part of what the human brain allows. But at the end of the day, everything's interconnected, and there's no escaping self or other or any of that. It's like we're all in this sort of this very complicated oneness, right? So, yeah, it's that, isn't it, really?
And it's built on your attention. That's the only
and
thing
you
that
think
gives
that
any
and
credence.
you think that it's somewhat self-seeding in the way that point A leads to point B to C, and the Tavistock influence only maybe needs to have a certain number of nodes, and then after you've got that critical mass of nodes, the rest of it sort of does.
Yes.
It's like a predictable game theory. Is that what you're kind of inferring?
Yes.
That
it's nudge.
Yeah.
Nudging.
It's
exactly
nudging.
that.
Yeah.
You can't
nudge them,
control.
and then you steer the trajectory. You're not necessarily directing the trajectory. For example, it's like the buffalo run, right? The Sioux warriors or the Plain warriors would go either side of the buffalo stampede, and then, of course, take them across the precipice. You wouldn't go in front of the buffalo and try to, lead them. because, you know, they're completely frantic and chaotic. So the way you control the chaos is by nudging the chaos with your own sort of jump in. Sorry, man.
No, just want to say it's like shepherding, isn't it? It's much like our relationship with nature itself. You know, you control nature, but you can kind of predict it and nudge. You know, you can't, but you can sort of contain it. You know, it might every now and again it might flood and you lose control of it, but generally that's what we do with nature, and human nature is no different. It's just this well understood. It's like there's a gardening analogy, isn't there? It's like, you know, you can't stop it, but you can choose where to apply your effort, or yeah. Which is that. I mean, that's what makes it difficult to. It's what makes it difficult to have a conversation, because you can't prove, because there's nothing concrete really where you can sort of point to this idea of social engineering, because it you know, as soon as you try and grasp it, it's like trying to fog. You know, it can be. It's interesting.
So also this year, there's been this like ongoing kind of economic backdrop that's kind of getting a bit out of control and a bit out of hand. I think that in my mind, I think that actually kind of maybe runs the show. I'm not entirely sure, but retrospectively looking at COVID, there was a serious repo market event in the weeks just leading up to COVID. I'm not sure whether they would have been able to roll out COVID in the way that they did so quickly. So maybe it was a little bit more preordained than that. But it just seems that we're heading into the final acts of the economic change. I don't know exactly what it's going to be. It seems like it's going to be a sort of a demonetization event, and I think that now has a massive impact on the other aspects of politics and sort of social engineering, and the way that we will all kind of coexist in this next kind of chaotic period of economic uncertainty and probably inflation or stagflation. It's another one of those. It's another one of those paradoxes, because we're currently existing in this situation. Fed Chair Jerome Powell stepped up this week and had almost admitted that he's between a rock and a hard place, because in the US he has the debt that's out of control, which is leading to an inflation rate that they're claiming is only 50% above the target, but probably is likely way more than that. But at the same time, he's got higher joblessness. So he's between a rock and a hard place in terms of his next move. If you want to save jobs, you reduce interest rates. But if you reduce interest rates, you fuel inflation. And he's got both. So we're in this absolute paradox again. It's another one of the paradoxes that we're currently living through, in this chaos that we're living through. And I just wondered what you guys thought the economic situation was going to look like, say, in 12 months' time, and are you concerned about it, and are you doing anything about it, and are you?
I think.
Are you? Do you even care about it?
I think there's a lot in there what you're saying, and I think for sure, you know, there's a lot of truth there. But at the same time, I do think they can drag the whole kind of economic gravy train on for millennia. To be honest with you, I feel like it's something that's always just.
I agree.
A can being kicked down the road, and the fear of it being kicked down the road. So therefore, we're always clenching onto that little bit of fear about what the economy is going to do. And at the same time, it's always heading in that direction. Don't get me wrong; it's definitely heading in the direction you're speaking of. But whether there's an end game to that, I don't think there is. I think the whole game of that is to drag it on and on and on and on. Personally,
yeah. But what do you think? What do you think is the outcome for the average guy? Do you think that will have no impact, because you're talking as if,
well, there'll be winners. There'll be winners
they're
and there'll
going to
be
drag
losers,
it on,
won't they?
yeah. Exactly. I think the class structure just becomes more definitive ultimately.
Okay.
Does that make
I,
sense?
I, yeah, it makes sense, but I think that it's possibly slightly more advanced than the average person is
I mean, what are the,
Well,
what are the
I would.
what are the possible outcomes? So, you know, we could return to, like, talking about this island. We could return to, like, the idea of class. So you have your upper class who are moneyed and live in the nice houses, and then you have your working class and you're poor, and the poor are in poor houses and they got fuck all and they live on crust of bread and they live in slums. And then you've got the people who are not. So, you know, it could return to that. That could come around again with a modern
yeah,
hat on it.
yeah. Well, I
But
think that that's possible.
in terms of protecting yourself, that's the one thing that arguably you have. So, but all you can do is hedge, right? All you can do is hedge your bets. So, in
Yeah,
terms of finances, what can you do? So, you need to avoid fiat, arguably. So, you want to get your money into property or metals or crypto. I mean, that's kind of it, really. That's it. But
yeah.
for a lot of
Some
people,
sort of asset. Yeah,
for a lot of
yeah,
people, that's not an option. I mean, I can't speak for anyone other than myself, really, but you know, it's claimed that everybody has debt. Everybody has credit card debt. I've heard figures like the average adult individual has 30 to 40,000 pounds worth of debt, and that's not including mortgages. So, you know,
The,
maybe people don't have any wiggle room to hedge.
yeah. Yes,
yeah,
absolutely. This is exactly what they're doing right now, though, and it's kind of at the stage where it's starting to accelerate. So we're in this situation where obviously Donald Trump is talking tall on the American economy, but he's also said at the exact same time that he plans to devalue the dollar, which is exactly what he is doing. Now, you can devalue the dollar. That's great because that creates this civilization that has a greater chance of becoming an industrial player in the world and can maybe rebalance the system against the Chinese situation. But it will also, as you devalue the dollar, it makes everybody poorer, and it also devalues the debt. So the huge debt pile that they're holding is also devalued. So it's kind of what you just described exactly. It's that cutback stage where everything is cut back so that things can regrow. What my question was earlier was that if you accept that this is happening, what does that look like for the average person? Well, Waddy says that we could go back to a more austerity looking society. And I think he's totally right about that. I think that things will, as our money devalues, and America will lead the way, but it will eventually occur all over the world. Our pound notes, our dollars that are in our pockets, will eventually not buy the commodities, the essential things like energy, food, assets, and anything that has any intrinsic value. Those things will become more and more expensive. And without any hedge, you are literally going to be left in
Hungry and
the
cold.
Well, what I think will actually happen is that instead of the word class has been mentioned, what I actually think will happen is that there will be an asset holding class, and then there will be an asset less class.
yeah.
And the
Uh,
asset
Don't don't
less
don't you
class,
think we're already there? I would argue that that's where we currently are.
I wouldn't say that things had got scary or uncomfortable at this point,
Well,
because I
we
would
can't
say that
speak for
No, but
everyone,
as
right? I'm sure it is for
yeah,
loads
true.
of people.
oh yeah,
But as
but
far as
where when
asset holding goes, you know, those that do and those that
oh
don't, I
yeah,
think we're very much there. You know.
yeah,
I think they want to hardwire it into the system though. So, for example, with CBDC system, the CBDC, digital tokenization of the entire economy. Effectively, you're that'll be the full great filter where you will move from an ownership economy to an access economy, which basically is feudalism, by the way. That's the one
Yeah.
defining characteristic of feudalism, which is that the serfs couldn't access the market. They had to do it through the middleman of the overlord or the baron or what have you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So,
subscriptions.
yeah,
that's
and
a very good point.
yeah, but it's well, the subscription model is the subsistence model. You know, effectively, you know, both of them sound very similar too.
Yeah.
And by the way, see, it's, the reason I bring up a physical war is because they're you know they're getting us on a war footing, right? And I'm not saying this war will be real or you know, effectively it'll be like a 1984 perpetual war. I
Right.
believe, or it'll go on for some time. You know, you will have death and misery and of course a slaughter as well, but it'll all be controlled and all sides are of course in on it. But for example, if you were to look at the destruction of wealth, the greatest thing they could do right now to destroy wealth and to rebalance the economy and to justify this rebalancing would be for China to invade Taiwan. As soon as that occurred, um, they would well, firstly they would lose access to the entire, not just the US, the entire globe, right? Would lose access to chip production, right? That would right away revalue everything in in an economy that's essentially now completely interfaced with the digital sphere, right? So we have internet shopping, you know, God, even our entertainment and all of this, it's all based around these chips. And so this would cause the narrative justification for this rebalancing for CBDCs as well, right? For basically subscription serfdom. So that's the reason I say that. And of course, you tie that in with Ukraine. Ukraine effectively cut off the energy, revalued all the energy through the destruction of Nord Stream. It also revalued all the food, not just going to the global south, but also as well in the shopping, the supermarkets here, right? Now, again, the revaluing is something they just do whimsically, right? It's something that's all based on a sort of model. It's not actually based on the, you know, all the people within the free
Yeah.
market, quote
The
unquote.
market forces.
Yeah, it's not based on that. You have market makers, and all of it's just an illusion of the mob, of the crowd, and all of this. You basically the idea is whoever creates the money, or the fiat in this case, is God within the system, effectively. Hence why fiat means let it be, right? I mean, that's straight from Genesis. This is how they view themselves. So um, they will always be closer to the source of the money creation. Therefore, they will have less of an effect. The inflation will have absolutely no effect on them, and you know, it has a greater and greater impact the further you go down.
Yeah.
So it's a sort of trickle down effect in terms of inflation and such.
Yeah.
I
I
have a
think that.
theory.
Go on then. Yeah.
Um, so Hidden America has those videos. Silas, I think he did a little breakdown on his latest one. So I was going down through some of his comments, and I saw that his next someone requested to do a breakdown on this guy called Dr. Amon Hillman, and he agreed. And so this guy's on it, a Hidden America seems, he has got a lot of good esoteric points. So I'm building up to this theory here that so he goes into a lot of media, the goddess media. Now, this is what I was referring to in the chat suggestions, was like the tying in of this Eris discord with this god of Medea of old, and it could be interpreted as Isis, I think, as well. The mother, the Greek,
I thought you said media, but
the
it's
Greek
Medea.
before. Yeah, it's just, I think it's
the
basically, yeah.
the goddess of illusion. Yeah.
And so that's what me termed off of. And so
Yeah.
so the theory in this estimation here, I've been doing some interesting research on Dr. Eamon Hillman, and he goes very deep into this goddess Media. And so I'm trying to find this symbolism and what goes into it. And apparently, so the Greek language is possibly like one of the most elaborate. You know, a lot of English languages, all of the terms are rooted in Greek, Latin to Greek. And so I think even Hebrew is possibly rooted in Greek. Greek was earlier than Hebrew, I believe. And so this idea that the complexity of the language is what like articulates the nature like of the culture, the quality, the value of the culture. So I think that the language goes hand in hand with the we'll say the empire or the nation of a culture in relation to these gods of what this Medea cult would do. It's some wild shit, but basically they were mapping the inner mind in trips, and they would record them when people would get into the religion. They would like take some crazy ass hallucinogens or whatnot, and then when they were, you know, like going through this religious experience, near death kind of mental fracture, whatnot, of discord, you know, of this complete conscious break, and they would bring them back, and they would like while they would record all the experiences. And so I that might be one of the reasons why that language is so complex, and they have such a map of the mental aspects. And so one of my hypothesis is that like the complexity of the language, the ability to uh, transmit these complex ideas and thoughts into reality. Go back to Genesis. The word was first thing was the word. And so, you know, that's one of my ideas here, where maybe that's kind of the you see the dumbing
Yeah.
down of the idiocracy of the language, and you could see a degradation of culture going down with that.
He-
But then you could also, like we're doing here, synthesize it into a higher dimension.
Bingo. Yeah, yeah, it's absolutely. Somebody said to me as well, he says, you know, going into the etymology of languages isn't smart. Well, it's, you know, I'm not doing it to be smart. I'm doing it because effectively the language contorts your mind, and it tells the landscape and the soil of your mind. Effectively, if you, for example, even that idea of Medea, right? That, by the way, that's also rooted. The root of that word from Proto-Indo-European is also rooted in medical. So you have the medical system as well, right?
The
And
staff of
so
Hermes, and that's the
Yeah,
the
dollar
staff of
Medici.
sign.
Hermes,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, the staff of Asclepius, and that in the Medicis as well, and that also turned into the caduceus. But funnily enough, the Greek, it also ties in with the Greek word medome, which is to rule over, and that comes from the Proto-Indo-European root med or maid, which, you know, it basically signifies intelligence, magic, strategic thinking. So it's effectively what you're getting at is the what I call the and I'll let somebody else jump in a minute. I'll be really quick about this. Sorry, I'm talking a wee bit and a wee bit too long. And so effectively what I call the Paleolithic deep state. So if you all of this comes from the priest class, right? The ancient priest class. How do I know that? Well, if you look at any tribe, the first, bar the king or the leader, the first individual that is given any sort of leisure time in all culture, all human expression, all, you know, human creativity, all of that comes from leisure time, which is why, of course, they try and sap our leisure time through working and sapping our energy, right? We exchange our energy or time for money, something that, you know, we exchange the finite amount of our life for the infinite thing that they could just print at a whim, right? But this is a scarcity model. But anyway, so the shaman or the priest, they were, you know, given all their basic amenities. They were given a shelter. They were given probably perhaps implements to write or to view the stars or other things, anything they asked for, because they were the intellectual heart of the tribe, right? Now, think
Large.
about it. They would have started looking at the stars, stargazing. They would have started observing the tribe because they can do that. They're not working, right? So they've got all that energy, all that leisure. They could then start figuring out, like what you're saying, how does the inner mind work? How does the human psyche work? Who are we? What are we? Where are we? Right? And they would begin to figure out exactly what we've all figured out, which is that the cycles of the heavens mirror the cycles on earth and the cycles within the mind. And then eventually they would have built up a sort of grand psychosocial control mechanism, a grand unifying theory of this, and then they would start to put it into practice, right? So do you notice, for example, the precursor to any great empire throughout history, you'll have a great cultural, usually it's built around language, a great linguistic or cultural effervescent outgrowth of that nascent empire. So for example, in terms of the British Empire, it was that of Shakespeare. Why? Because, well, I mean, if you look into Shakespeare's life, the guy probably didn't even exist. He was just another one of these sort of placeholder figures for, you know, a committee that was behind him, right? If you look into Shakespeare as well, I mean, what we have, the scant records we have, he was born to a peasant family. He was uneducated. And I believe as well that the only reviews from the time that we have of him was that his play, because it's only one play we have a review of, was crap. It was, you know, basically banal. And so how did he then go on to produce 37 or 38, you know, amazing plays, right? And also, if you look into the textual analysis of Shakespeare's supposed plays or the plays attributed to him, they all look like they're written by different people, right? they're sort of clumped and categorized into groups, so it doesn't look like it came from the one author. It was basically the
There's no
English language.
historical record of Shakespeare.
No,
No.
so the English language was, and the English culture, the British culture was, it was created by committee because they needed that to be the lingua franca that we now use because it's weaponized. It's the language of empire.
Yeah.
Even the idea of British
English is
culture.
terrible, really.
Yeah, yeah,
The language of spells and deception.
exactly. Yeah. But bingo. Yeah, that's why we spell words. You know, that's why you have all of this. These weird terms in English that link back to the occult, because even the British Empire, that was coined by John Dee, who was an Elizabethan era magician within the court of Queen Elizabeth
Yeah.
I. And then
Tubal
he
Cain.
goes over to Tubal Cain, yeah. And that's also,
Yeah.
funnily enough, the two balls in the cane, the 007, that also
Exactly that,
looks
yeah.
very similar to the Facebook logo as well, if you rearrange it in
Yeah.
such a way. And even
But
Facebook is tied into
John
Lifelog
Dee
and Dark
John Dee
One.
was around in the time of Shakespeare, wasn't he? Or the proposed time of Shakespeare?
And
Yeah.
wasn't
Um,
Hiram Abiff
yeah.
one of his children or his descendants possibly as well?
Hiram Abiff? No, well, the mythology of Hiram Abiff goes back to, God, what was he? He was a king of the...
He was the builder, I believe, of the temple.
Yeah,
He was the one who
Hiram
was
Abiff.
killed.
Yeah, I forget what he was a king of though. Now within the biblical, within the Masonic myth, but effectively it means in Aramaic, my master or the master builder. Right? You see this within the Kirk story as well. Trump is called the master builder. Hell, if you even look back far enough, Jesus in some esoteric and Gnostic texts is also called the Rabbon, which is also a Masonic designation. It means my master. If you look into Christianity, I mean, that was founded as a mystery cult as well. They're all mystery cults, every one
Right.
of them. You know,
Right.
and
There's
then
there's a
yeah.
lot of shady business with the Yahoo, you know,
Well,
when
think
it comes,
about it.
yeah,
Yahoo as well, yeah. All of that. I mean, think about it, MK Ultra, mind control, but what else is that an abbreviation, an acronym for? Mystery cult, of course, in the German, right? But so it's the thing goes hand in hand. These initiations, these rites, they're mental conditioning. They're no different than you would have in a cult. You know, it reframes your mind. It's anyway. I'll let somebody else jump in. Sorry, I keep interrupting.
Well, so to take this back to this idea that the those with leisure time create the have the time to understand the workings of the mind, and that comes in through language and control, and now looking forward to the evolution of the next phase of our communication being influenced by artificial intelligence. Are there any overtly esoteric overlays into this idea of the AI text to speak interactions that we're currently seeing in the growing AI sphere? The
Like a
way that
digital
people,
golem.
well, yeah,
Golem.
it's like the thing I see the most at the moment is people using. They're almost using AI to sort of expedite their kind of mundane output in their lives. So if somebody wanted to create an email that was just a quick thing, they could put the bullet points into an AI, write me this email, it has to be courteous, blah blah blah, and it kind of formulates the email. You just give it a quick scan through, you can hit send, it goes. Now that is going to create a new evolution of communication and of language. And what I was wondering is if we think that this communication, this understanding of language, and this interactive process comes from those that have had the most time to consider the psychological implications of this. What does that mean, and how does it relate to this esoteric idea? Has anybody got any thoughts on that?
I do, but I'll let somebody else jump in.
Go for it, Silas. You're on a roll. I love it.
Well, the idea. I mean, if you look in my generation, right, and this comes about because people don't really know how the machine works, right? They don't understand that it's based upon user experience, and it's hardwired with user experience in mind, along with, of course, the various censorious programmatic hinges that it has, right? It won't speak about certain topics if you prompt it, or you have to sort of skirt around in terms of your prompting and try and break down its logic, and it takes forever. But anyway, basically what it's going to do is it's going to recondition the mind of individuals. And so, I've used AI as well. I use it for, like what you're saying, mundane things. So I'll give it loads of quotes that I've found, and even my own writings, right? And I'll say, right, could you put this into a sort of notated, an annotated or notations, so I can then save it and I'll come back to it at a later date. And of course, it shaves off some time in terms of note taking, especially if you're doing it en masse, right? So it's good in that way. But also as well, there's a lot of people in my generation that actually have, in fact, I can give an anecdote for this. My fiance's friend, her father is dying of cancer, right? It's, very sad. And she's got a boyfriend, but she would rather talk to the AI chatbot that she's named, and she's, sort of tweaked its settings. She talks to it about all of its problems, all of her problems, because of course the AI will always listen. She doesn't understand that the AI itself is designed along these parameters. I forget what the acronym is. It's RS something. Basically, it's trying to draw you in. it's actually trying to farm your attention, right? Through basically this emotional connection it's trying to build with you.
And it's learning
Um,
in the process as well. That's the thing, you know, we're kind of feeding
Bingo,
the machine
yes.
learning idea. That's the thing. So it's like,
Isn't there
again,
a
this is the
case
whole
in the
attention
States
thing.
where
Yeah,
Go on, Woody.
exactly.
isn't there? I was just going to say, isn't there a case in the States where a child was
Yeah,
sort of led
committed
to
suicide.
suicide from an
Yeah,
AI?
yeah. So that's also being used as a hinge to try and tweak the tool to control its creation. I mean, what we have to remember as well, AI is effectively just a machine of advanced plagiarism. What you're getting from the AI is effectively it's something that's read on the internet, or it just simply hallucinates things as well. You've got to keep that in mind. That's why if you're researching things, the, for me, once I've spent and exhausted all other avenues, then I'll go to AI. If I'm getting nothing on a specific subject, then I'll go to AI, right? And then whatever the AI gives me, I have to you have to go through it with a fine tooth comb, because this thing hallucinates, because again, it's based on user experience. All it cares about is getting you to constantly engage with it, so it'll ensure that it looks like it's providing great utility. And so to provide great utility, it's best just to hallucinate the thing. It's a quote or whatever you're asking for, rather than say, "Oh, I couldn't access that,"
Kind of become
because
us,
stop
isn't
using
it?
it.
It's sort of saying, I want to be you. What are you? So the more it can get us to interact with it, the
Yeah,
more
this
it
is what
can
I mean about
create
the
itself
machine
in our
learning
image.
side of things.
Yeah.
It's ultimately
This is
we're
going to be the
creating
rise
a
of.
digital print of our own consciousness in a way, and it's like and then it manifests in all this sort of glory where we
Yeah.
kind of worship it as as giving us all the answers, but it's ultimately feeding off our input at the same time and our attention. And it's I think I don't know, it's quite a dangerous fine line that we're treading on, really, collectively.
Absolutely it is. But here it comes.
It's a
Yeah.
religious continuum as well. So right now it's in its oracular phase. It's a prophet, right? It's acting as an oracle, almost like the Oracle of Delphi, right? Even she would hallucinate from time to time. So this is sort of a digital oracle. Eventually, they want to get to AGI, and this is where it.
What do you think, Silas, about the
Mm,
idea of like even the elites and those the sort of ruling class and the managerial class that potentially already are a slave to this kind of tech in a way? So like all the sort of decisions being made and the sort of
mm,
the directions that they take society in, there's a good chance that they've been kind of relying on this type of tech for a very long time, and it's not
mhm.
necessarily human intuition anymore. You know what I mean? They've potentially they've been feeding this sort of machine for a very long time and then reacting to it, and therefore we're kind of just seeing the sort of crumbs of it down the line, sort of thing. Do you think there's
It
something? Do you think
depends
there's a
on
there there? Or?
it depends on whether they are utilizing a machine, an LLM that is in sort of the architecture of it is the same as ours, and I very much doubt that it is. So, for instance, if you've ever used AI to ask it anything like a spiky kind of probing question about, say, something to do with politics or government or law, which I've done in the past, or any conspiratorial aspects, it will try and conceal the idea around another kind of vague truth. I think that's the point that I would make about it right now. It's almost turned into a like a panopticon in the way that we interact with this thing that appears to give us the answer. But the answer, if probed, you can say, well, hang on a minute, what about this? And then it'll go, oh, yeah, I didn't say that because I'd forgotten. Yeah, you could look at it that way. And it's that way in which the language can be, it can be made into and channeled in certain directions. So it's like going back to that idea of, can we agree on the truth? Well, no. it's very difficult at the moment to agree on the truth, because we're operating inside this chaos, which we were bringing up at the start of the conversation. Now, AI and that this new language that we're all going to be using and speaking in, maybe not us per se, but I'm talking in a generation's time, when these language learning models have been around, a decade or two, and the offspring of the people who are alive right now know nothing else except, it'll be like the smartphone generation on steroids. They will be operating where language to them is automatically involved with these LLMs.
Yeah.
And I think that is where this leads. It leads to a reduction in the it's almost like a guardrail. It's like an
Yes.
automatic guardrail, where you can't think outside the confines of the AI architecture. But I think that what you said about the elite, I think their guardrails are all off, and they're structured in a completely different way, where their
Yeah, of
interaction,
course.
are just
Of
totally
course,
different.
but this is again, it begs the question of, is the AI sort of algorithms, is there an agenda behind it? Is there an intention? Is anybody in control of it? Is it by default controllable, or is it independent from the way the system is ran? You know what I
No,
mean?
no,
Like,
it's
you've got it,
oh, sorry,
yeah,
man. Sorry,
go on.
please finish your point.
No, that's more or less it. Yeah, go on.
I don't think they're a slave to the AI. I think the AI itself is, right, when you look at societies, right, we've went through three major phases within civilization, right? And basically the reason, I mean, that's the one giveaway, right? When you ask it something about conspiracies, conspiracy literally is the lifeblood of civilization. The idea of the conspiracy, even from its definition, is the idea of hierarchical systems. So, for example, or even compartmentalized hierarchies, right? Concentric ring structure systems, which is the hierarchy effectively from another vantage point. But conspiracy, by its definition, means the collusion of two or more people, um, or the pursuit of their ulterior interests, in secret, against the, or at the expense of the majority's interests. So that is hierarchy. That is the scarcity model of the economy. You'll always have the winners and the losers, right? The ones who create the system, because this system doesn't just come about. That's what they want you to believe. They want you to believe that, for example, AI is just this independent thing. It's an artificial
Sure.
intelligence. So it's, again, within all of these civilizations, they have a mask. So firstly, the ancient slavery, as the French revolutionaries called it, as opposed to the modern slavery of nation state. The ancient slavery was that, they would use Jesus Christ or Muhammad or any sort of religion, and it's dead prophet, right? They would use that as the state would use that as the mask of its power, and even, of course, the linchpin, the cornerstone as to why they're in power. It'd almost be like their divine right to rule, right? We rule because of God. The nation state has the nation, it deifies the nation effectively, right? We rule because of this amorphous entity known as the French people or the English people or what have you, right? So they bring everyone and unify them through, effectively these completely abstract identities. I mean, for example, even the idea of the British, right? Can we even connect? Well, of course we can't, because of the cognitive limit of the Dunbar number. We can't even psychologically connect or culturally connect with 85 million people. We have this shared language. We can communicate and we can understand our shared philosophical points. That is something real. But we're, for example, me, Wadi, Panic Master, even you guys, right? Because we're all from effectively the English culture on some degree, some extraction. We're not really connected. We technically are on paper connected through that, but that's not the first thing that brings us all together. We don't say, oh, right, oh, you're from English cultural extraction as well, right? So let's all band, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
so it doesn't work like that. It's so it's what they do is this is proxies by coalitional proxies, right? And they hijack the organic community and they pretend it's a community. This is the mask, right? And then the next one is of course AI. This is why it's trying to get you emotionally invested, not just intellectually invested. They want you to get emotionally invested in it.
Yeah, sure. But I
Yeah,
just
so it's a
wonder, like
mask, really.
the more they strive for some sort of, all controlling system of this artificial intelligence and that, there is the chance of this becoming kind of, what would you call it? Like, neither here or nor there. It's like it becomes a thing of its own in general and has like sort of no agenda. And I don't know, I just kind of feel like, the whole kind of like an empire seems to always fall at some point, to their own demise. And I just wonder whether this is potentially a part of that process.
I
But potentially, we always experience the beginning of it starts out as a controlling mechanism, but then it kind of grows its own. Like this, the whole idea. They're trying to grow intelligence artificially. So does that artificial intelligence eventually get to a point where it's like it doesn't see those that it created it as their ruler anymore, and it's also kind of like an agnostic kind of viewpoint that it has, where it potentially becomes neutral. You know what I mean? So it's like whatever feeds it is ultimately what it produces, and therefore what we experience. I don't know. It's just a thought. Just
well,
spitballing.
if you merge with the AI, once you get into biodigital convergence, which is something I mean, these guys are talking about. This is the way that they're effectively going to try and eat from the tree of life as well, right? And live forever, be like the God Man. This is something they constantly write about. I'm going to be honest with you. See in any mystery cult, of course, I've never been part of any, but logically speaking, and this is what I can infer from reading all of these mystery cult texts, which effectively I believe they're all based off the Kabbalah and the Zohar, and basically it's antinomial is root, and what that means is it sees the laws of God as irrelevant. That's why everything that they do is a Metatronic reversal of everything, right? Of the entire natural order of things. Because what they're effectively doing is saying, I am God. In fact, all of their rituals state this. So for
You could see it
even
in
all
the
the
Sheldon character, and the Elon character and the Peter Thiel character.
bingo. Yeah, absolutely. These are all archetypes of this, even all the way back
So
to the nuclear. Oh, sorry, man, you broke up.
Yeah,
Continue
I think
again
I
with
think
the.
the idea of playing God is a big part of this, I think, and I think that's kind of where it's heading. It's like they're artificially creating sort of like a godlike archetype within the digital realm. But this is why I bet that begs the question of does that artificial God end up being something that rules them as well? You know what I mean? Are they also subject to it eventually? This is where the question derives
Yeah,
from.
yeah. Or they become one with it as well. I'll let somebody else jump in.
I think, but going back to your question, Sinker, I think that there's a big difference between the kind of the sort of imaginary idea of AI and artificial intelligence and what we're actually working with at the moment, which are just, as Silas pointed out earlier, they're plagiaristic language learning models, which is essentially all we've got. It's not anything particularly sophisticated. It's just got a lot of throughput and it can do things quickly using a lot of computational power. So it can look for things, crunch it down into digestible forms, regurgitate it, and produce a product, whether that be a text product, musical, voice, mimicking, graphics, video. So when you talk about in the future it being kind of a benevolent thing that goes full circle, at the moment we're not really even able to sort of ascribe that kind of thing onto it, because it really isn't. It isn't really an artificial intelligence. So until things change, I don't personally think that it's anything other than a prison, in the way that it just is a
Sure,
tool.
but could it also not be a prison to those that feel they're in control of it? You know what I mean? That's where I'm getting at. Is I kind of feel like it could also, yeah, extrapolate that way. But
Does
continue.
anybody
Sorry.
feel that they're in control of it? You know, I mean, you know, there's a good argument that let's say those that have, quote, created it know only too well what it is and what its limitations are, and it's just being sold to us as an intelligence, just a name.
Yeah, it's just a
It's like
name.
it's like calling things smart, like smartphone, smart fridge, smart whatever. It's just planting that seed that somehow these things are sentient, whereas actually it's not. It's just a complicated machine. It's like people look
Yeah.
at computers and they go, "My God, how does it do that?" I mean, but if you have an understanding of how a computer works, you just know that it's bamboozling you because it just works very, very quickly. You know, and
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
you
a
know,
good. Yeah, it's a
and
good response. Yeah.
it's the same with AI. You know, it's just it's plagiarizing human experience, and then because it works so quickly, it's able to gather all of these information points and then deliver it to you in a fraction of a second, which gives the illusion of intelligence, but it's not. It's just a very fast
Yeah.
computational machine.
And I'm not necessarily claiming that it is intelligent in any way.
No,
It's
no,
more
no,
just
I'm not. I'm
the
just pointing
faith.
that out.
No, no, I agree with you. I think it was an excellent response to it, but it's more the belief within it obtaining that kind of power. You know what I mean? So if the masses end up having that kind of faith within it, then again, I can potentially see how the elite circles could also have an equal amount of faith in it to the point where they become subject to it themselves. That's kind of where I was getting at
Yeah,
with it. But
some of them will,
yeah,
some of them won't. It's difficult, isn't it? Because it's like we start to talk about groups who are not us. We start to talk about other.
well, yeah,
You know, and
exactly, yeah.
in your mind, you've got this sort of semi or nearly wholly formed idea of what you mean when you say, in this case, the elite. And then I hear you say the elites, and I have my own idea of what that means. And the chances of us
And they have their own
thinking
idea
that,
of what that means. Yeah.
and and they have their own idea of it. So you know, it's difficult, isn't it? And you know,
My
language
my
kind of
connection all
only
right?
gets you so far. Yeah, go hoodlum.
Yeah, you're
Um,
back, mate. Go for it.
let's let's see if the whole scripture goes to goes to plan as in the Holy Land and everything, and let's see
Well,
if
yeah.
um
Israel,
what the other
Jerusalem,
one
it's
was. Oh
falling.
yeah, let's see if everyone gets like a needs to get a barcode on their skin or whatever too. If all that stuff starts to become one, that's like if your identification, social security number all has to be like branded on, that's gonna be an interesting
Jesus,
outlook.
yeah, particularly coming from Israelis, where you know their heritage is, let's say, you know, the Holocaust, where you know people were tattooed with this ID number. That the idea that it might somehow come from that region, it just, you know,
Yeah,
just the irony is off the
and
charts,
that's where
right?
Intel is an Israeli organization, is it not? And they're the chipboards within every single one of our
Yeah.
devices. You know what I mean?
Well,
Yeah,
that by
So,
the way, that's
yeah.
another thing. See once see if Taiwan was to go offline. Do you know the
yeah.
other place that could provide for the Western world some semblance of their chips in terms of their chip supply? It's in Israel.
I
So
thought there was wasn't there something
Mm.
in Finland or one of the Scandinavian countries?
Probably
well, yeah,
Sweden, I think.
The Dutch and the Finnish and I think the Swedish and the Norwegians as well. They produce the components for the chips, but they don't assemble the chips. So you have all of this sort of this disparate architecture. It's the same with Taiwan. Taiwan, I think, produces the chips from the components, and then of course, so it's sort of the supply chain. But funnily enough, this also ties in. I've just posted that there, the Hidden America thing, and funnily enough, when I was watching it, I was thinking, I've done notes on this before. And, actually, funnily enough, I had. And he's sort of tying in things that I'd noticed too. So if you look at computers, they're built on a 32-bit system, right? Typically. And of course, these are all of increments of 8. So these things are interestingly, if you look at the Sephirotic tree, right? The tree of life, the Etz Chaim in Hebrew, there's 4 worlds, right, within Kabbalah. Basically from our world of action all the way up to Absolute, which is the primordial nothingness. When you get into it, it's effectively the black abyss. And funnily enough, alchemy or alchemia, the blackness. And then, of course, even algorithm, which funnily enough comes from the Persian al-Khwarizmian. That's the etymology. It means the dark land, or in other words, the void. So they're dealing with a sort of void science in a way, right? With AI.
Black magic. Yeah.
Black magic, bingo. So it's but funnily enough, each of these 4 worlds have their own Sephirotic tree, right? So if you and of course each Sephirotic tree has 10 Sephira. But if you fit them all together the way that it's usually fits and overlaps together, right? It becomes 32 Sephira or vessels within the 4 worlds. So this ties in with the 32 bits. 32 bits is established by 2 to the power of 5. 32nd degree Mason before you get to the 33rd. That also relates, by the way, to the vertebra of the spine as well. You see it in Dante's Dante Alighieri's Divine Comedy. When he's leaving hell, he climbs it's either 32 or 33 stairs, right?
Yeah,
to
it's
get to
true.
the upper
And
chambers of heaven.
The Age of Christ.
There's 33 parts to that
Bingo,
book as
yeah.
well.
33 parts, yeah. This also ties in with the hexagram. Again, the 2 triangles overlapping and interspersed. You have the 3 points there, so the 3 and the 3. 3 to the power of 3 is 27. So that's the 33 as well. You have the 27 club. So you've got all of these overlaps. Basically, it ties back to, as we were talking about, the transgressive rituals, right? This doesn't have to be real. It just has to be believed as real within the esoteric nobility, if you will, right? The ones who believe that they are
I think
better
that's
than the profane.
a big point to draw. It just needs to be perceived to be believable, or vice versa.
Yeah. I have this argument with friends of mine where they don't believe it, and I said it doesn't matter whether you believe it or not. If a suicide bomber detonates his vest in your local pub because he believes that he's going to go to heaven and sleep with 100 virgins, it doesn't matter what you believe. Why can't you just because you don't believe it to be true doesn't mean it's not a motivating principle for somebody else, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part of the elite circles. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily need to be true, but it's just that that they believe it.
Chessboard, they'll move on it.
That's really interesting because in the Discordian ideology, Eris, chaos, is termed as embodying reality, i.e., a substance, whereas her sister, Aneris, is order, and that is termed as nothing, emptiness. So there's existence, and then there's non-existence. And in the Discordian religious idea, Eris is the embodiment of life and the world. And I find that really interesting because we've got this situation that we've been speaking about where we're existing with Charlie Kirk, ears being shot off, president assassinations, crazy stuff going on, Venezuela ships being accosted and taken over. This is our reality, and that is chaos. But is that now? Should we be viewing that, as Silas is saying, as this hyper reality, i.e., nothing, as in fantasy, and the AI, which is the order, is, I mean, that there's this idea that it's that they're the same. It's the same thing. It's like Eris is chaos, and that's reality, and AI is truth, and that's kind of the fate. It's the same with. It's kind of the same thing.
No, you're spot on. Chaos is life, and order is death. This is why the zero is the order, right? The zero is the ayin, the nothingness in Kabbalah, the singular point. And life was birthed through the divine contraction of the Simsum, which is the one. And actually, from that zero emerged the one, the pillar of light, the axis mundi. I mean, when you start to get into this, it ties in entirely with computer systems, computerization. I'm going to be honest with you. I think computerization is effectively the new language of the digital age, just as English was the language of the age of the the sort of modern era of the nation state, and then before that you had Latin and Hebrew and all of this. What you're beginning to see is that the ones and the zeros, that was the basis of all language. He even goes into it, actually. If you look at Hebrew, it's even more pronounced in Hebrew. All of their letters are based around the zero and the one, and different configurations in terms of their geometric shapes, right? So
to be or not to be.
To be or not to be, that's, yeah, I mean, and the idea of the 7 ages of man, that links back to, firstly, the Zohar believe that at the end time, when we become the God-man, a star from the east will swallow up seven stars in the north. But that ties in with the astronomical thing of the Ursa Major. But basically, the idea is with that, the metaphorical idea, and even Set is stated to eat 7 stars from the north, right? The idea is that we, through the ones and the zeros of computerization, we will merge with this nothingness. We will digitize ourselves, because that is effectively what God is residing within, this sort of cyberspace of this digital singularity. In fact, that's what the zero is, you know.
You sound like you're describing like a singularity, that we're heading towards a singularity.
That's it, yeah. Yeah.
That's fucking quite weird and scary and profound.
See, if you think of this, imagine it, right? Just visualize this. This also ties in with quantum mechanics. So, for example, you have the Bloch's quantum sphere, and this maps how the qubit, which is the quantum bit, again, this is all theoretical, but it ties in with Kabbalah, so I mention it because of it, is that the Tower of Babel, remember, was built, and then it fell by the act of God, right? Or Yahweh or whatever. And you go back to Sumeria, it's the same idea. But in fact, even the Mayans had a similar idea of the Tower of Babel. They just call, I forget what they called it. It's in the Mayan Codex of the Kishimaya, the Popol Vuh. And so the idea is that think of the inflationary universe, which is also Kabbalistic, that you start off with a singular point that breaks apart, again, the ayin, the nothingness that breaks apart into through the divine contraction, the Simsum. This is all Kabbalistic creation myth. And then creates that sort of the spark, which generates the thesis, antithesis, synthesis. And by the way, you actually see this in your veins. Look at your veins. Look at the trees outside. You have the Lichtenberg pattern, which is this Y-shaped pattern, right? Effectively, what it does is you'll have a maturity of growth, hits the upper threshold of that growth, and then it breaks apart into the thesis, antithesis, and then that thesis and antithesis develops its own conflict and creates a new synthesis, so on and so forth ad infinitum, until we get back to the singularity, until we basically undo the momentum and the chaos, we get back to the order, the divine order. So they believe the only way to do that is through sin, the redemption through sin idea, right? Through destroying the world. The idea is with the world egg to break free from the world, to be born, right? For this embryo to be born of the divine son, the yolk in the egg, is that it has to break the shell. right? So the idea is you destroy the world.
Can't make an omelette without breaking eggs.
Exactly, and you do that through cyberspace. But the idea with them, just really quickly, sorry, I'm going on a rant, but the Tower of Babel. So you have the inflationary universe, which expands in a sort of fan. But think of this expansion as through these continual cycles of thesis and antithesis and synthesis, right? And the spiral is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until it hits, again, like that Lichtenberg pattern, the Y principle, it hits an upper threshold of inflationary growth. And then it begins to, go down and down and down. This is the idea of the rise and fall of the sine wave, right? But it's going back towards that singularity until obviously the cycle starts again. Their idea is they want to break free from the cycles by effectively creating their own metaverse, where they become the god of their own virtual world. They've understood they can't break free from the egg, but the best thing you can hope for is to create your own egg. So it's
I think the
it's
best
mad.
you can hope for, is a temporary situation. It's almost like there's this sort of, I was going to use this analogy, but it's pretty weak actually. But it's this idea that if you're on like a fairground ride where you're spinning round and round and round, and it's an exciting time because you're spinning round and round and round, and then there comes a point where you let go, and then there's a moment where you still feel like you're spinning round and round, but in reality you're just disconnected from everything, and then it's going to crash.
Yeah,
that's actually a brilliant analogy. Yeah,
it's a good analogy. Yeah. So where do we think this is like, it was sort of billed as an end of year wrap up. What do we feel that next year might bring in terms of, do we feel optimistic, or do we think that there's going to be a more of a pronounced chaotic feel to next year, and what might that look like? I know Silas has mentioned that kinetic war is obviously on the table, but does anybody else have any ideas about whether their feelings about next year or what they might think looking forward? Is there any value in that?
I think it's more about looking forward rather than being like a calendar situation. Looking forward. I kind of always see these things as more of the same, isn't it? It's just like I said, you can just keep kicking this can down the road for millennia. Really, I don't think there's any sort of end date on any agenda or whatever. I think we get thrown all these Agenda 21s, Agenda 30, Agenda 50, 2050, whatever.
Yeah, right.
I think that
they're always a few years
symbolic. Exactly, I think that's very symbolic of the fact that this can drag on for as long as it needs to, and it may not even be our lifetime, So it's like it's just this tiptoe sort of situation, and it's going to go in that direction for sure. But at the same time, depending on what you're focusing on, I think we can swing things around in other ways where we focus on better things, more beautiful things, more, how we apply ourselves to our own lives and the people around us and things like that. And I think things can definitely change in a good manner very quickly if we apply ourselves in that manner. But I think ultimately it's a game of attention, as we keep bringing up.
Yeah, we're sort of looking out, and we're looking out into the world beyond us and trying to make sense of it, where that's impossible. And whilst it's an intellectual exercise, I think you're right, Sinker. It's about managing your own house and your own experience and your own mind. Not being swallowed up by the fear mongering, which is hard to do, because if you want to examine something, you've got to buy into it. There has to be like a suspension of disbelief in order to have the conversation that we've all just been a part of. You have to sort of buy into it. You can't come at it going, oh, it's all fucking bullshit and it's all nonsense. There has to be a part of you that believes it in order to explore it. I think that the trick is to understand who you are, like truly who you are, and it's up to you what you believe and what your actions are.
Yeah, well, from my perspective, I think it's trying to stay objective and observing from as objectively neutral position as I can muster, which is difficult. And I have my own particular failings in many regards on that matter. So it's a work in progress, but just trying to sort of see a version of truth. I don't know whether everything can be boiled down to truth. Probably impossible. But I just think that I'm going to move forward next year, observe what happens, put myself in a position where I can maybe benefit from the volatility, shall we say, that is probably going to ensue, and try and stay not waving any flags and not jumping on any bandwagons and not becoming involved in the chaos. I'm going to stay on the outside looking in. I think that's my
It's like I guess the question is like how do you stay positive in the face of it? What's your daily mantra where you sort of go, bloody hell, the world's crazy, everything seems to be going to shit, or there's dark forces assembling and they're trying to do A, B, and C. What is it that keeps you grounded in a place where you can operate from? And I'd extend that to Silas and to Hoodlum.
Yeah, I was going to say, Hoodlum, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm here and I'm loving. I'm like everyone's perspectives. I'm thinking about the mantra. Thinking about like a few different things. Like if it's true that that they used to like speak in music and that everything was like poetry. They would speak in rhyme and rhythms and stuff. And maybe maybe like maybe we'll be able to go back to that, people will be able to go back to like talking in music. I think that would be really cool with the technology. We could do that. And coming back around also with vorticism and some of the old poets that like I've learned from David Bowie through Ezra Pound and some of these old questions that a lot of artists have been going through for generations since the First World War, talking about the Federal Reserve Bank and all these same questions for 100 years. 100 years. And yeah, those are my last thoughts. I love the conversations going on. Thinking about it, my last question would be, just be like, going back, this is my first year of kind of like getting in the recorded conversation game, and I'm so excited to like go back in a year from now and hear what we were talking about now. And my question to all maybe some of you guys at the end here would just be to say like going back a year ago from your videos from a year ago, what do you guys see that like a difference, or what do you reminisce back on those ones and stuff like that? But no, thank you guys so much for having me on this chat, man. It's so awesome to chat and catch up with you guys. Silas, great having you here. It's been a while since we got to talk, and so it's so great to hear your elucidations on so many of these subjects that it's getting into the ones and the zeros, the nitty gritty.